Welcome to the Power Monkey Podcast, where we chat with the best in the world of fitness about what they do. I'm your host, Dave Durante, with my two co-hosts this week being Jordan Samuel and Mike Service, and we are talking another movement-specific podcast, one that we put out on our social media, and we got great responses on, great conversation around should you be kipping your pull-ups. I think you'll be surprised with some of our responses here, whether or not technique plays a role in where you are. Does strength need to be developed first? Is kipping pull-ups something that is inevitable when it comes to higher volume training? Let's take a look and a deeper dive into the kipping pull-up. All right. Hey, everyone. Movement podcast today. Mike, if you are a listener only, Mike will be distracted because he's trying to kill a fly in his living room for the past hour. And so maybe he will get to it. It'll be a fun little adventure through the podcast today. But
past 2 weeks, and I'm not killing it. I'm just trying to stun it so that I can put it outside.
So kind. Mike, you are a kind soul.
Needs to live.
The kindest of kind. Movement today. We are going to be breaking down a topic that we put up on our social, on the Power Monkey account not that long ago. Should you be kipping your pull-ups if you cannot do a strict pull-up? And we had some really interesting responses. It's a good conversation piece. We're going to go into some of our thoughts around it, some of our viewer responses, just so you're aware of kind of what came back to us. 64% said no, you should not be kipping before you have a strict pull-up. 4% said yes. 21% said it's more nuanced than just a yes or no. And 11% said, I don't have any idea at all. So we're going to go into it, give our thoughts as to what the best approach is when it comes to kipping and strict action. Should you be kipping at all as an athlete? And where is that starting point? So we're going to get into it. Mike, what do you got for us?
Yeah, Dave, I got to start with the 4% one. And I know this isn't going to fall in line with either of us, but can you imagine, or have you heard a rationale from somebody that would fall in that 4% of like, oh, I don't care if they can do a strict, like they should be kipping because that's what's going to get them the most reps and the most score in their workout.
Yeah, that's probably the response. It's, speed first.
Well, yeah, one of the actually responses I think was something along the lines of, like, well, when you do a push pressure, push jerk, you're using your body to generate force. And so that's what you should be doing, even if you can't strict press it overhead. And
Mike, maybe we're gonna have a separate one around should you be push jerking before you can strict press. But
that actually, we would have to get like a whiteboard and go into a full-on debate there. But I think that's where we're probably going to talk about strict pulling capacity and then how that can translate into the skill like a kipping pull-up. Because if somebody was trying to compare strict pull-up to kipping pull-up, as is strict press to push press, yeah, somebody should be able to strict press in general, the movement pattern, and they should understand how to do it. And I would hope that they would have a good capacity of strict pressing to then learn the skill that could build upon the strict press, which is a push press. Like there's a lot of similarities within the two movements, but they're not completely equal. So somebody having a really good strict press most likely will be able to have a very good push press, especially if they have the technique down. But somebody, myself being one of those people as an athlete who strayed away from a lot of strict strength when I was younger, I had a pretty decent push press, but I had a horrible strict press. And then my push press just died over my career. I was never able to improve it because I didn't have the base layer of strength that I could have worked on early on. And I think anybody that knows, like, when you try to build your strict press, especially like later in life, I guess, or after you've developed a lot of other movement patterns, it's boring. It's like, it seems very slow. And then you're like, oh, I don't even want to do this now. I just want to do push presses or something like that. So to me, it's like a good point to try to make, but actually not a valid argument.
Fair enough. I think that's probably another separate podcast in and of itself. We can start talking about these more nuanced weightlifting movements as well. But first comment I would make on this topic is, does the kipping pull-up have a place at all within fitness, within, the functional fitness world, the CrossFit world? And I think the answer is yes. And so like for all the people out there that's like only strict is the only way that you should ever be doing your pull-ups. And this is coming from a gymnast, but I think there's a lot of the population out there, especially from the calisthenics world, that is strength first, this idea of, Getting strong requires, not having any momentum. And that's exactly right. And that's true. But if I look at it from a gymnastics perspective, we have a very strong connection between understanding how to utilize strict and tempo work and pause work and getting strong within our full ranges of motion. But then there is a huge component to gymnastics that requires dynamic action and using momentum to work on higher level skills and different movement patterns. And so, is a kipping movement, a kipping pull up or a kip or a swing necessary for higher skill development? Yeah, it is. And it's a part of the process. In my mind, the missing link is understanding when to apply it and how to apply the kipping action. And that's where most people make their mistakes. It's not whether or not it should be. It's just about, are you in a place to be able to really utilize and capitalize on that movement pattern appropriately, or are you doing it before you're ready? So that would be like an initial starting point.
I mean, that's a good point when you talk about how you use it in gymnastics for learning higher level skills, because the truth is that even in the CrossFit setting, people who just start out and they're learning a pull up and then potentially a kipping pull up, they're going to use that kip for chest to bar pull up, toe to bar muscle up, ring muscle up, all those other things. So what I'm hearing you say is that it is in itself a skill that needs to be taught, and it's not just about getting your chin over the bar.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever been to a Power Monkey camp or a Power Monkey course or heard any of our other movement podcasts when we talk about swinging mechanics, you will always hear me mention this. I think it's the biggest missing link between understanding exactly how to bridge the gap between strict and kipping. And it's understanding that the swing, the kip, generating momentum is a skill that needs to be learned and perfected on its own before you expect to be able to apply it to a pulling movement. And this is where people make a huge mistake. They think you go right from strict, right into kipping, and the kipping mechanic is going to somehow figure itself out. There are so many nuanced components to understanding good positions. What initiates a kip? What body part is supposed to be initiating it? What are the shapes that you're supposed to be creating? What are the things that generally happen that someone that maybe doesn't have full range of motion through their T-spine or has some underarm soft tissue mobility issues and can't generate a good kip? What ends up happening to their kipping action that deteriorates as fatigue sets in? So in my mind, people miss this step that's so clear from a gymnast perspective, that the swing needs to be a separate component before you build it back into the pulling side of things. And just as a reference point, we always make the comment of working towards the highest level version of any movement, not just towards a standard. I never train anyone towards a particular standard. We always train towards highest level version of the movement. And with a swing, whether that be on rings or on bar work, what is the highest level variation of the movement? Now, you guys have heard me say this a million times over the years, so I hope you know the answer by now. But what is the highest level variation of a kip swing on the bar?
A giant.
Yes, thank you. So,
a giant. Sorry, I was
I
thinking
was
too
looking
simple.
up something, I swear.
starting small within that swing, you're starting within a very small angle. Your fixed point is where your hands are attached to the apparatus, rings or bar, and that swing can get generating, build bigger swing, bigger angle over time. And in the gymnastics world, the biggest and highest level expression of that movement is going full 360 degrees around your fixed point. And you can do it on rings, or you can do it on parallel bars. You can do it on even bars, the bar. And that is called, in English, a giant. And you can do a front giant or you can do a back giant. So the fullest expression of a swing is building the small angle that we work within and building it higher and higher and higher. And to understand those mechanics goes a long way in understanding the shapes that you need and then eventually applying them to the pull. Make sense?
It does.
Yeah, for me, a giant is a squat jerk.
The fullest expression of the movement?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the case of a person who can't do a strict pull-up and they want to do kipping pull-ups, what is the problem that would create for the person if they were to just start doing workouts with kipping pull-ups in them when they can't do a strict pull-up?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that go wrong. One, you're not going to be efficient, right? So you have no understanding of when you should be pulling. Timing is a huge problem for a lot of people that kip before they have a strict pull-up. They end up pulling super early. They don't have a nice efficient action. They end up swinging much more aggressively than they need to because they need more momentum to generate the pull than they're able to capitalize on from a strength perspective. So what ends up happening in a lot of these cases is their swing is so aggressive that they end up swinging in the front part in their arch so far past a position they can maintain. And we start seeing a lot of broken positions. The comment I normally make here when I'm teaching this is that when you're thinking about swinging actions, curved shapes and straight lines are our friend, and angles are our enemy. We don't want any angles when we're just working on the swing. Angles lead to slack, and slack leads to less efficient movement and also potential injury in a lot of those joints. So basically, if you have a visual of this, if you have an angle, whether that's an elbow bend or you're pulling down from your lats when you're just working on your swing, those angles will end up creating slack once gravity comes into the equation, when you can no longer maintain the positions over time as fatigue sets in. So the curved shapes that we want are really critical in being able to create the hollow in the arch. When someone is swinging super aggressive, they're swinging outside of a range that they can maintain, and we normally see a very significant elbow bend in the front part of that arch, which is a really big no-no from a coaching perspective. So poor positions, less efficient action, and joints that are not stable enough to be able to maintain the high volume work, high volume reps that come with doing a workout like that. So we end up seeing a lot of deterioration around the joints because the person does not have stability around their end ranges. So yes, you can become more injury prone. You're going to be less efficient in your movement pattern, and you're not going to do, as we said earlier, work towards higher level variations of the movement.
I think the injury part obviously made huge concern, but the less efficiency of the movement is something that people, I guess I would say, don't take seriously enough, because they're like, oh, I'll just fix it later. But we had Vellner on a while back. I don't know if you guys remember this, but he was talking about, learning fundamentals and learning things the right way to start, because as you get better and better, even as an elite athlete, especially as an elite athlete, you have to start finding more and more small areas where you can improve upon to get an edge over your competitors. And at the highest level, when you're so strong and you can do all these things, the way to do that is to be more efficient with your movement. And in the case of you not learning it right the first time, that means that you've got to go all the way back and relearn how to do something. Like maybe you can do, 30 bar muscle ups, but you need to be able to do more. And so your coach is like, well, you got to go back and relearn how to kip swing better. And he's like, well, I can already do all these bar muscle ups. Goes, yeah, but if you want that advantage, you have to learn how to do it the right way. And so my point is that your point about less efficient movement, like, let's just get it out of the way in the beginning so that your ceiling can be as high as possible instead of having to backtrack down the road.
Yeah, and Dave, with what Jordan's saying, it just kind of makes me think of the stuff that we come across all the time, whether it's when we do courses and we have coaches and gym owners, asking about trying to convince people, what's the right way, how do we keep people interested or engaged. And Jordan, you just made me think of, it's like we can't necessarily tell a gym to completely change its culture. But I think what we're constantly trying to teach and preach is that you have to have an understanding of the why behind everything. So if somebody's why is just simply to do more, there's a couple of ways to answer that. Like, yeah, one is to get obnoxiously strong, but maybe look horrible and then have injury potential. Or another is to move really well, really efficient. And yeah, Jordan bringing up Vellner's point was yeah, kind of like a bell ring in my head. And then when Alethea Boone was on, she was kind of the other end of the spectrum. She's like, yeah, I've been in the sport for a long time. I'm getting a little older. I've had injuries in the past, and I like to save my joints and do more strict. And then when the time comes, I'll practice my kipping movements so that I'm ready for, a specific workout or competition setting. So my long talk in this moment is just kind of, it's a conversation point. Like everything is a conversation point, and everybody needs to be willing to talk about it a little bit more, not just do this because, or, kick here more, or whatever it is. I like that we can have a discussion like this.
Yeah, I think being able to answer why to a client and a member in your gym as to, why you're suggesting, hey, you probably should take a step back on this is really critical. And then getting buy-in. With regards to Alethea and Vellner, they're both gymnasts too. They both come from high-level gymnastics backgrounds. And so they grew up understanding good movement pattern, the efficiency that comes along with good swings, and now the benefits that come along with being smarter around how much kipping my joints need as I'm becoming, an athlete that is still looking to compete at a high level. But I'm a little bit older. My joints need a little bit more consideration than they did when I was 20. So it's nice to hear them say those things and recognize the importance of good patterns to gain that extra 0.1% in the competitive setting, or just thinking about it more from a longevity perspective. But whether you're an athlete looking to compete or an athlete that's looking for longevity out of this and just looking to be able to, move around your day a little bit more efficiently, in both of those cases, it's beneficial to be considering good movement and not skipping steps. So it's not one or the other. It's not just saying, hey, if you're an athlete, just get strong and you're going to be able to kind of, bull your way through things. Like, no, like both of these things can be benefited by spending a little bit more time on the technical piece.
Yeah, Jordan, go for it.
I was just gonna say, you were talking about a culture shift or getting buy-in. How do you do that in a class setting? In a CrossFit class, let's say as an example, you've got a workout that's got pull-ups in it, and you have athletes that both can do strict and kipping and athletes that can't. How do you get the athletes who can't do a strict pull-up buy-in to not want to just go full tilt at the kipping pull-ups when maybe they shouldn't be?
All right, so
I
let's take a step back for a second. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just gonna say, and I know yours is gonna be way bigger answer than mine. I hate how things are labeled so often. So like, you know, we're gonna we're gonna do a scaled version. I hate that. Like, of course, nobody wants to do the scaled version. So I've always, believe very strongly in like how you word things. And so when you have classes, like these are the progressions that we're working on. We're working on a vertical pool in today's class. So like, where do you fit on the spectrum of these pooling exercises, and being able to have like pre-testing and post-testing within strength blocks within gyms? And I know that's one of the things that is always a struggle when, people want to do always constantly varied, is you don't have good points of assessment to say like, oh, you know what? I know I can do 10 horizontal ring rows really good and controlled right now, and I can do 5 strict pull-ups. So you know what? For today's workout, I totally can do some kipping stuff because we've been working on that. But understanding that all of them fall on a spectrum and none are necessarily a scaled version from the other. They're just all progressions that have value.
So I'm going to go in a different direction just with my comment, but just to build on that with what you said, Mike, been doing CrossFit classes for 15 plus years now, and I've been in gyms all over the world, everywhere. Almost universally, and this could be just a particular kind of coach or where the emphasis has been, if there is a strength component to a majority of the classes that I see, there is a ton of time being put into the technical aspects of Olympic weightlifting. You will see so much emphasis on positional work with, where to set up those feet and where do the hands go, and, do you use hook grip or not use hook grip, and, where does the bar sit in your hip and when you're getting ready. There is so much nuance and people are willing to take the time to build their progressions within their Olympic lifts. And I wouldn't say never, because there are some gyms that do a very good job with it, but it's so much more rare to see time spent on building strict gymnastic strength, strict dips, pause pull, peak pull, working on straight arm pull, working on front lever actions that translate into a better pull when you're on the bar, when you're doing a kipping pull up or a kipping muscle up. There's almost no emphasis on this, and it's really missed opportunity within an hour class that I think requires maybe more education. Mm-hmm. But from a gymnastics perspective, this could be a huge opportunity for people to say, okay, you're weak, but you never spent any time on it. Like there's, if there's a strength component to your hour of block, let's put some emphasis on the push and pull stuff along with what you're doing on the weightlifting side. And I think that would be just a way for the everyday person to spend a little bit more time on an area of need rather than just saying, okay, the workout started, I can't do it, so I'm going to kick my face off instead.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that with all of these things, anytime you have to modify a workout, there should be some additional options that the coach is then giving to the member to say, okay, look, you're at this point in that spectrum that Mike's talking about, and these are the additional things that maybe you can do on your own time, or if you want to do a private or whatever to like get you to where you need to go. But to Mike's point, I agree. I hate the word scaled. I think that it has a connotation to it that anytime you say you're going to scale the workout, it just, for a lot of people, it just puts a negative thought in their head, like, well, I'm less than. And so I don't like using that word at all. I like saying modified, because everybody's workout should be different because everybody's at a different point. And your relative intensity is what we're after, not the fact that we're all using the same weights or we're all doing the exact same movements. So when I coach classes, I am really adamant about conveying to the members that the workout today is going to be the workout that's where you are at. Because yes, it's 3, 2, 1, go. It's a quote unquote competition, but it's not a competition. And it's definitely not a competition with the guy in the lane next to me. If anything, it's a competition with myself and who I was as an athlete a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. And I think that's the culture shift that really needs to happen inside of, CrossFit gyms, is that you should not be competing with the person next to you.
All right, I
Not
think
at the
this needs this is we need to talk about this a little bit more, because I think there's going to be some pushback here from listeners on this, and even from my perspective of what that really means, because 3, 2, 1, go in my mind means we're competing. Like, we are going to try to get the most rounds, try to get the most reps, try to get the best time in this particular workout. Maybe I'm competing against myself. Maybe I'm competing against the person next to me. Maybe I'm in the open, whatever it might be. But when you set up scenarios where the clock becomes a component of the workout, competition is a factor. And I mean, you guys tell me if you're, maybe Mike, you don't, but I know me and you, Jordan, we've got battled back and forth on a lot of workouts that we enjoy the competitive side of what CrossFit brings to the equation. We enjoy seeing if we can, beat our previous time or better a previous score. So saying that those workouts are not competition, I think it's it's misleading a little bit in terms of why people are doing the workouts. People enjoy that competitive aspect. So saying that you're not supposed to compete is not it's not going to sit well with people that actually enjoy those type of workouts.
I get that. And yeah, I enjoy competing with you too. But if you are competing every single day, are you really taking advantage of your opportunities to improve and to grow?
Okay, so that's one part. It doesn't need to be every day.
Yeah, it doesn't.
That's important.
For sure. There are opportunities to compete that are healthy because you need to test yourself and push yourself and these other sorts of things. But I think that predominantly the problem is that in gyms across the world, people are competing essentially every day. And I don't think that's a good formula. And so if you can at least break that culture in your gym to say, today you're competing with yourself, today you're training, tomorrow you're competing with the person next to you, whatever it is, so that you can have clear plans to improve yourself, I think that's where we need to kind of move towards.
I agree. Now, the other thing around the competitive side of things, and maybe we're getting off topic, but I think it's important to note these things. You don't have to always compete around speed and time of workout. And I think this is a really important note. You can compete around how many pull-ups, strict pull-ups can you do? Beat your strength time, your strength numbers from last time. How long can you hold a handstand? How long can you hold from the bar? There are competitive situations that people never put themselves in. One of the questions I ask people all the time at my handstand station at camp is, do you know your max handstand hold time? To me, as a coach, this is one of the most important starting numbers that I need to see whether or not the person actually, one, considers their handstand hold, whether or not they're able to breathe in their handstand hold time. And it's a way to compete that doesn't require you to go fast. And so competition does not always need to be, am I the fastest one here? So I think that's important to note. There are ways to compete that can focus in on what we're talking about here. It just
Agreed.
needs to be factored in more.
And I know that at some point we are going to do a podcast specifically on competing versus training, but I think that the reason why I brought that aspect up is because that's how, in general, I address the issue of coaching a class where somebody who wants to kip and should not be, that's how I would handle it with them is if you get buy-in from people, especially if you're coaching the same class over and over again, they know like, hey, this is how we do things here. But if you can get somebody to agree, like, yeah, I'm not going to try to compete against Mike today because we're on different levels, then it's a much, much easier conversation to have with them when it's like, okay, this is what I think you should be doing as a substitute or a modification for your pull-ups today. And that's generally how I like to approach it.
I have a maybe a bookend comment on this area of our conversation. I think it falls into the subgroup, Dave, of the people that responded like kipping is nuanced. Like it's not just a yes no answer. And I think that's the case. And I think we definitely try to do that within our, collection of coaches at Power Monkey is we don't have the like black and white yes no. There's always a conversation point and there's always some gray
It depends.
areas.
It
And
depends.
yeah,
It
as
depends.
we yeah, as we learned, it depends. And that's the thing. And we can even be, too quick to say like oh yeah, CrossFit gyms just always compete. Well, no, there are gyms that probably compete too much. But just while you guys were talking about that, I was thinking about Nicole Christensen over at Roots. Like I get to help her with some stuff and kind of let's say advise on weightlifting strategies. And I love seeing their gym programming because they really use traditional main site workouts. But when you look at it, it's like one day they have strict press, push jerk, and that's their workout. And then within their class, they're always working on different cycles throughout that to complement that. So maybe they have a gymnastics component. And when I'm looking at how her gym does it, I see like maybe 2 times a week where there's really like a crazy like get after it workout, and all the other ones are kind of mixed and
Mm.
falling more in line, I think, with what the, let's say, the ideological hope of CrossFit training was, because it's CrossFit training. Like it's not, everybody is not training for the games. And I think it just comes back to like, should you or can you do kipping pull-ups if you don't have strict pull-ups? It does depend. And it depends on what are your goals. Like, are your goals to be more fit? Are your goals aesthetic? Do you want to look a certain way? Are your goals longevity? Do you want to be healthy? All of those things just have to come into consideration. So if you're even asking that question or attempting to answer, just the kipping pull-up question, go deeper in it. Like what's, as Jay, what's the why behind everything? Why are you asking the question? Why are you doing it? And those are things that I think offer for good conversation.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good kind of insight slash cheat for people that are following our Instagram because we posted one the other day and one of the first comments was, Ugh, I hate these idealized posts where where you say it's one thing or the other and it's not. And well, the truth is to what Mike's saying is that essentially every one of the questions that we posted so far, the answer is always it depends or something to that effect. So yeah, if you're going to be following us and you're watching the questions that are coming out, you can be pretty safe to say as an answer in our comments of any of them, just it depends.
Yeah, and
It depends for
there's
sure.
always.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Dave. I was just going to say, I think you're the same as me. Like, we're going to have strong opinions in certain areas, and it generally leads to when people limit their potential to grow
Mm.
or if they're going to risk injury. Like, those are the only 2 times where it's like a pretty hard no from me when I'm coaching or teaching methods.
Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned this on the podcast before too, and maybe we can put a link to the video. But Coach Glassman mentioning a few years ago that if he had the opportunity to go back and change anything, he would have people make sure they had a strict pull-up before they got into kipping, or postponing kipping pull-ups for a little bit later down the road. I think it's important to note because people take as gospel what Glassman said early on as the way that all of these movement patterns should be done, and you can learn from the millions of people that have been doing these things over the years and say, hey, this is probably a better approach. as we start to look to compete or think about it from a longevity perspective. And um, the one of the reasons why I think some of this is lost, and maybe this plays into our wheelhouse, is that there's not enough good gymnastics education. There's not enough coaches at gyms who can give the proper cues when they see what's going wrong with someone's movement pattern. And there's just so much more weightlifting out there, and credible and capable weightlifting coaches that can, correct a hip position or, an overhead position than there is to say, all right, your kip is off. Here are 5 drills and 5 mobility exercises that you should be doing to benefit your kip before you get into kipping pull up or bar muscle up or whatever else it may be. So people shy away from it. They don't even know where to start. So, it's hard for someone who doesn't have good progressions or a good eye from a gymnastics perspective to be able to actually give that to a client. So, instead of looking like a coach that doesn't know what they're talking about, I think coaches shy away from even talking about it at all, or programming those things. And so it's a missed opportunity. And I'm not trying to plug Power Monkey here, but come to camp. Go learn from a really credible gymnastics coach somewhere so that you can be more capable of applying that to your clients and saying, all right, I'm seeing what you're doing wrong. Let's try and fix it with some of these things, so that rather than just saying either we're going to shy away from it and not talk about it at all, or let you do whatever you want in a workout.
Yeah, and Dave, I'm not going to shy away from it. I will plug Power Monkey till the day I die. If I mean everybody can't come to camp, everybody can't come to courses we have. You know what all of you can do? You can download the app. And funny thing, we have all these programs to help with skills. And when everybody's always asking us everywhere, how do I fix this? How do I fix that? You need to learn the appropriate accessories to build upon the bigger movements, or to offer you a chance to grow into the bigger movements. So, the nice thing that we have with all of our skill development plans is they set you up where you are. Like they allow you to work at a pace that you're at. And I think, we believe in them. So that's something. If you're a coach right now and you don't know what to do, then there's some great examples. If you get into some of our plans and start working on those with yourself and then with your athletes. And Dave, you said, I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole, but it's like a Pandora's box with weightlifting. Everybody is a weightlifting coach in CrossFit. So it's cool because everybody gets to work on a lot of weightlifting, but at the same time, everybody thinks sometimes they know more than they do. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, everybody's afraid to teach gymnastics because nobody's exposed to it. So it's like we need to kind of find that happy medium. I think that's where Power Monkey comes in. It's like maybe you don't know as much about weightlifting as you thought you did, and there's still a lot to learn, and you can definitely serve the community better. And hey, here's a great group of gymnasts and amazing coaches and teachers that can level up the community, so you're not afraid to spot somebody on a handstand, or show them an alternative movement to get on the bar and do good quality pulling movements. So again, this is the main reason why we want to do more of these types of podcasts too, is to offer our voice and our confidence a little bit to the community that, yeah, for over 10 years has been seeking us out and wanting to learn from us. And the more that we can talk about these things, the more that we can continue to develop our side of the equation and offer more and more opportunities for people to learn.
Yeah, we need more good coaches on the gymnastics side, and we want to help build that. Like Jordan, didn't come from a gymnastics background, has been working with us and, improving his gymnastics coaching skills for years now. And I would have complete confidence in putting him in a gym and him being able to give the same cues that I would give to someone, and being able to see the nuance that goes along with the mistakes that a lot of new athletes make around a lot of these skills. And it takes a long time. And I mean, if you want to become a high level coach, if you want to become someone that is capable of working with clients across the spectrum, you need to put that time in. And there's a lot of people out there that really want to learn. They maybe don't know where the resources are, or where to go. But I would say the easiest one, if you're a coach out there and want to become better, this is Power Monkey Camp. It's by far the most in depth and best place to come and hang and learn all the nuance that comes along with working with high level coaches. But the other thing that we touched on a little bit here that I think deserves another little conversation piece is, again, working towards high level skill development. And I think that we've talked about it before, but with regards to like a kipping pull-up develops into a kipping chest to bar, which develops into a bar muscle up, which continues down this line of higher skill development, right? You're never training towards the standard. We see athletes all the time that maybe have actually a really good kipping pull-up or a really good chest to bar. And then when they think about bar muscle up, shit goes all over the place. They end up throwing one shoulder over the bar and they're moving patterns all over the place because they suddenly, like, their brain short circuits for some reason. And their pattern goes all over the place because they think that the bar muscle up is this really complicated other movement. No, it's the exact same pattern that you are capable of doing repetition upon repetition with your kipping pull up and chest to bar, and then just building a little bit of a higher pull. Center of mass is high enough to where it goes from a pull to a push, and you complete that movement pattern. So if you can have the correct building blocks and your brain wrapped around that movement pattern, the next step up within that skill is not that far away. You shouldn't think about these skills as all completely siloed. Like learning a bar muscle up is by itself and learning a kipping pull up is by itself. They all build into one another if you have a good foundation. So I think it's really important to note that if you want to be thinking about the highest level skill, along the way, you're going to be learning some amazing skills and other progressions that are going to have value for you as an athlete in terms of how you apply them.
Yeah, would you say that in the case of that progression from a pull up to a bar muscle up, that, when people are trying to get that bar muscle up, the thing that they're neglecting outside of not realizing that the kip is the same is that they're just not working on pulling lower, the strength in order to pull lower. So like, how often have you been in a gym where you see people working on really low pulls strict or any
Never.
sort of, yeah. So like to your point, they're just like, okay, well, I guess the next thing is I've got to make the kip even bigger or even better
Right.
just to get to that. So, I guess
So yeah, I don't know if you're leading me into this response, but whenever we do strict pull up and you're working on a strength component of a strict pull up, what do we do, Jordan?
max height pull, peak pull.
Peak pull. If you are an athlete out there and you are working, if you've taken the time to work on your strict pull or your strict dip, your push or your pull, it should always be to max height or depth. So if you're doing strict pull-ups and you are only completing chin over the bar, it is not sufficient in terms of what you need to get out of that skill. If you're working on your strict pull-up, it should always be peak strict pulls, meaning pull as high as you possibly can, not just chin over the bar, not just chest to bar if you're capable of doing it, belly button to bar. See if you can do that. If you're an athlete out there that has incredible pull strength, always work towards the maximum of that movement because it has transferability to the next part of that movement pattern. So we always talk about peak pull, peak depth on your dip as well. And those two components go a long way in starting to combine them when you start thinking about bar muscle ups, kipping muscle ups on rings, things like that. But peak pull is something that we stress endlessly when it comes to strict pulling work.
Amen, amen, amen.
I think,
feel like
I think we pretty much covered everything here.
I think so too. I mean, I'm curious to hear a response. I'd like to hear maybe some listeners chime in with their own thoughts around this. And I know sometimes these are hard conversations to have because people are so set in stone in the way they do things and say, I'm going to kick my face off because that's the way I've always done it. I never hurt my shoulder. I'm 25 years old. I've never hurt my shoulder before. Okay, great. Your particular case, you're very lucky that you've been able to stay healthy. But are you as efficient as you need to be? Are there things that you can probably be doing a little bit better to make you even faster and even better within that workout? So consider the conversations that we've had with other elite athletes that have been on the same page as we are here. Consider development of skills. Consider some of the things that we talk about with longevity in mind. And from my perspective, I love these conversations. I love being able to chat with people about it. And maybe we won't always agree, but I think it's one that needs to be had. And from a gymnastics side of things, again, we need more capable gymnastics coaches out there. So come hang with us so you can build your ability to have that coaching eye. I was sitting with Hinshaw and Chad early on in Power Monkey days, and we watched someone run on one of the salt runners. We watched someone do some muscle ups on rings, and we watched someone do a snatch. And we would early on at Power Monkey Camp, we would do slow-mo movement analysis for people. And it was actually a really cool thing that we would bring to the equation. We would film ourselves doing a movement, and then we would have someone film, and we would use some kind of coaching app where we could slow down and overlap the movement patterns and see what someone was doing right and someone was doing wrong. And the three of us were all able to see like between 15 and 20 nuanced things within each of our specialties that the other coach was not able to see. So if Chris was watching a muscle up, he wasn't able to see those things. If I was watching running pattern, I wasn't able to see those things. And it was really interesting to see a specialist be able to say, there are 20 things that I see just within that swing that could be improved upon. And you can't develop that unless you're someone that puts in the time. You need reps under your belt to start seeing what's going right and what's going wrong, as opposed to just a gross movement pattern. Say, yeah, just do more of them. Oh, yeah, you're ready to kip. You're ready to kip. So I would encourage you to spend time viewing movement. If you're a coach out there that really enjoys this and wants to become better, come to camp, spend time with someone who knows this stuff really well so you can start getting those repetitions as a coach in your mind so you know what to look for.
You can actually also, if you go to our YouTube channel or even in the app, we have a slew of videos that go over movement. So if you are a coach that maybe doesn't have somebody that you can watch do the movements really, really well, you can go to either one of those two locations and watch Dave or Mike, when it comes to weightlifting, do these movements really, really well so you can kind of train that eye a little bit more like Dave's saying.
Absolutely. Anything else, guys?
Problem
Good to
solved.
go here?
Yeah. We fixed the debate of the strict versus kipping pull-up. On to the next one.
Well, I'm sure there will be continued conversation. That's what we want. You
Definitely.
mentioned a lot of the app already, Mike, and I appreciate you mentioning Power Monkey Training. It's a great place to start if you're an athlete looking to get better at particular skills. You can find it in iOS, Apple Store, as well as Android. And camp. This may be coming out as we get close to Power Monkey Camp, and we are starting our 11th year. Power Monkey Camp 21, just around the corner. Come check it out. Find out more at powermonkeycamp.com. We have another camp coming up at the end of September, our 22nd camp. There are some spots available for that. If you want to come learn from us in person, some of the great minds from a variety of the different specialties, all in one place for an entire week, it's a great place to do it. Thank you, guys. I think we're closing out from here. Have a great day, guys, and let's keep the conversation going.